All right, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. I apologize. I realized I just sneezed into the mic before, but I didn't. I forgot that the mic was on. All right, so let's get the, where are we? Let's get the thing up. Hello, how's everyone doing? Yeah, shaved. I got tired of my white beard. Wasn't working for me. But anyway, yeah, so we are back with live with JMD DeSantis. I was only off last week, and last week was only because it was my dad's birthday. And yeah, got a day away. I got to go down the shore, no, not Point Pleasant. We went to Seaside Heights in New Jersey here. It was nice. It was nice. And then I did a 3-day convention this past weekend, and I'm tired all over again. But we're here for the drawing and everything. Quick updates on things. Been working very hard on Chadiana, not on things that people would expect, but I am working on those languages so that I can really get the next issue out and then get to work on the other issues and finally get that caught up and maybe get ahead, maybe start getting into some issues following the 5-part beginning series. And then from also with that, I haven't announced it yet officially, but the Beast got picked up again for my laptop seems to be going a little slow. I might have to ditch the visual after I'm done talking. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, the Beast got picked up again for a Kid in a Comic, so I am also writing a script for that while getting Chadiana done for a Kid in a Comic as well. And both stories will have a catch-up before you go on to, so if you weren't reading for the first season, you'll be able to catch up with the second season, because the first season's about to end with issue 7. 7 issues a year on a Kid in a Comic. akidinacomic.com. That's how you can get it. Otherwise, let's see. This weekend is Fan Expo Boston. Different dates, different time, different location, but that was all because the exposition center is being renovated this year. So hopefully that's good things for future shows, and I hope this one goes okay. I was there. I was at the Heinz Center for yeah, like I said, this camera is doing all kinds of things. I don't know what it is. When I draw, I might just turn off the camera for a bit. We'll see if that helps. But at least my audio's on the phone here. So hopefully it's not getting too jarring seeing me moving differently than my my camera. But anyway, yeah, so we, what did I say? Fan Expo Boston this weekend. I love that show. It's always been good to me. So I hope the change in location and dates doesn't affect things too much, as that can happen with shows. And then I got Garden State Comic Fest the following weekend, and Undiscovered Realm. Be my first time at Undiscovered Realm Comic Con, and we will see how that goes. Oh wow, it's giving me like a poor connection now. Never had that come up on my live stream. Well, we'll see what happens. But anyway, like I said, I'll probably ditch the camera for a bit once I get onto the drawing board. So let's do that. I can still talk about the other stuff while this is going. Okay. can tell it's going to be uncooperative. Having a little bit of trouble even getting the format to come up. Oh, no, it is up. Okay. Nope. Whoops. Man, it's really on a delay. Okay, there we go. So we're up. We're going. Turn on this so we can get some light on it. You guys can see my mess over there. I'm trying to get a better layout for the drawing screen so, you know, what I'm working on is actually centered. And, you know, I got some other stuff over there. Yeah. By the way, I had some stuff still sitting. I just leave pieces of artwork that I haven't, like, finished or done anything with yet on my drafting table. I still have this Chadiana, like, I never colored in, but... And then this was what was on the thumbnail, which is that Ghost Rider I finished a while ago. Anyway, let's get this thing going and done. Where were we? I believe I had been. Oh yeah, that's funny. I'm actually wearing a Jersey Devil shirt today. I forgot to mention that. You know, that's actually going on here. Wonder why the internet's working so slow. But anyway, let me just pull this up for a second. Sorry. You guys are here for the drawing. But yeah, I bought this when I was down in Seaside. Also bought a Taylor Ham shirt because that's the proper name for it. Anyway, yeah, Jersey Devil. Oh, maybe I could work on that tonight. But I think I'd never even touched this since the last time. Wow, that's funny. I was working on the Jiangxi. So let's get him going. And then, of course, you know, if there's time left over, maybe I'll move on to the Jersey Devil because we're getting close to the end here. The Golem was done, right? Got a zombie and a Penangalan to do. I can't pronounce that right. I'm sorry for any of my Southeast Asian fans that are aware of the proper pronunciation for it. But anyway. Oh, that's right. I was going to do some Chinese characters. Oh, no. My mistake, everyone. I'm sorry. I totally forgot to do that. Layout before the show, but let's do it. Characters on Chinese characters. It's going to be like the Jiangxi. Yeah, the Chinese hopping vampire. What does it usually have? The Chinese character for Jiang means harder stuff. Transform. Sorry, I'm looking for what the actual text characters are. On the little paper paper spell. Okay, change. Yeah, but like, what is on? Characters on paper spell. I know this is like all the golden rule. Okay. It's very hard to find, honestly. I have no idea. What the hell? It's very hard to find. Oh no, it looks like it's this. Maybe I did find it. Okay. So what do they have to say about it? Sorry, last bit here, everyone. I'm just trying to. I'm gonna go by what's on these in a Chinese movie. So it looks like it's something like I'm gonna need my glasses for that. It's a little too far away from me. Life of an artist. You cannot see anything anymore because you're just like damaging your eyes by doing all these and what do we got there? I actually can't see them all. I might have to do. God, I hate to do that though. Mhm. I wonder though if I could. No, it's supposed to be darker at the bottom, right? Yeah, I got this. I got this. Okay. So here. Maybe I should keep that on for just a moment. Okay. Trying my best, people. Sorry for anyone that thinks that this is completely inaccurate. It probably is. Doing my best with it. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that is really going slow over on my laptop. It's plugged in now, so it's charging. Speaking of charging, I think I can have my phone charging too, so it doesn't die in the middle of my live stream here. Look at that, frozen. Okay. All right, so here we go. Back to it. Here, right? All right. That's all done. Something's going on and Whatnot. Oh yeah, so Whatnot actually reminds me though. That's so much darker. I really should be matching a lot of this. So anyway, Whatnot reminds me, I am going to be doing Whatnot on Tuesdays as well. But what I'm going to do is instead of doing this weekly or Whatnot weekly, I'm just going to go every other week. And part of the reason for that is it's just like way too much for me to be doing 2 live streams a week while I'm doing so many conventions. So, yeah. There's that. So yeah, it's more than likely going to happen that you are not going to see me doing these. Well, I'm going to do 2 to 3 weeks on these live streams, right? And then 2 weeks on Whatnot. I decided to go live with this week, but technically what'll happen is, or technically this is supposed to be a Whatnot week, because what I'm going to do is the 1st and 3rd and potentially the 5th week, I will do live streams. And on my second and 4th weeks, those will be the Whatnot days. So if you want to see me on Whatnot, it will be every other week. And it'll be the same with live streams as well. I can't see any other way to do it unless it's going like that. So I knew this was going to need a lot more to it than what I had originally put down, but that's okay. It would be easier when this is in 2 different books, but I feel like I have a very difficult time remembering how I went about this. I guess I really did go very dark with this. I want the book to match all the way through, of course, so that's a big reason why I'm like referring back to some of these older pieces. Yeah, Sasquatch is the only one where it wasn't like that dark. And I guess to a certain degree, Bloody Rawhead and Bloody Bones. Even the Squonk had a lot of dark stuff going on. All right, so I guess I understand what's going on with this now. Okay, right? Man, I gotta refer back again. How do I do that? Well, that had a very dark sky, but that had a lot going on. All right, I think I got it now. I think I do. All right. You know. Hey, Jim, well, again, I've been starting at 9 instead of 8 o'clock lately, just to see if the um, flow is better. Although nobody has shown up yet because I can't get oh my God, Cirilla, you're going nuts now. I can't even draw. Oh my God. The Facebook is not letting me connect to StreamYard on the on my personal profile, which is where I get the most views. I tried to post that was happening and to come over to YouTube, but hopefully people see the post. I think a lot of times people just see I go live and then they like jump in that way, but it's okay. I'm glad you showed up because I'm going through an interesting phase, and I think this is where I always wind up running into problems with my con lines. Oh my God. Do I have anything here? So I've decided what I am going to do is I'm going to definitively, except in words that I coined and don't want to get rid of, I'm going to definitely use any stable roots in certain certain of the protos. Well, you just use the other ones as inspiration, but that's not where I'm coming to the problem. I wrote out a whole Swadesh list, the Morris one, the 207 word one. And then I was doing and yeah, my laptop's giving me all kinds of trouble with my visual right now, so I might just like switch that off for a second. The camera, you can see I shaved my beard, but anyway, so what I'm finding is like I'm not all that happy with how the language looks and sounds, I'm trying to just like not free form it, but trying to narrow down, especially in the Semitic languages that I'm doing, like I'm trying to narrow down a lot of my a lot of the what are they called? The morphology for nouns and verbs and everything, and like how that looks with these. And even though I have a system I want to use for one of the languages, everything that actually comes out sounds like silly and horrible to me. It's almost like even using some Semitic roots and using the system that I feel like works really well for how I want the names to sound and look, all of a sudden it starts looking like crap. Or sounding like crap, I should say. Oh, Cirilla, I can't work with you there. You're so good though. So yeah, I'm having a tough time with it, Jim, because now I'm in the actual, I'm back to the creation stage, and I think this is where I get most frustrated is suddenly either my words sound too long, and I can look at another language and be like, oh, well, how come they can have like short words, or they just sound so ridiculous with the little bit of changes I make, to make it my own and give it the kind of flavor I'm looking for. So yeah, I don't know what to do. I just spent hours today poring over names and just, taking different routes and filtering them through some of the morphology rules I created. And yeah, I was like not so happy with the results. What do you do in those cases? If you can even still hear me, or if this like whole thing is not working because of whatever internet connection problems I seem to be having. I hope you can still hear me, Jim. It's not garbled nonsense. Hey, Cirilla, do you think you could let me work? Please? People want to see my hand moving over the area there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you heard any of it, Jim. I hope you did. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what will I don't know how to improve it, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Oh, it sounds like, I think mixing paints, it's like don't be too strict with the rules, let your intuition go. Yeah, I heard. Okay. Yeah, it's weird because even though I'm working with like the proto language for the dwarves, which I call Dweros, is going to be Semitic. And I hope that's not a faux pas, but honestly, like I loved Tolkien's dwarves, and so I stuck with Semitic languages for them, and it gives me for the history of my world, it makes perfect sense why they would, and then it introduces it to other Semitic languages, but the proto is Dwero-ish. At least I'm calling it that colloquially for now. And but I still want it to have certain sounds and looks similar to what is that? Like Old Norse. So there are some diphthongs and kind of like a lot more O's and U's in it, and some of the ways the structure works on how the words come up. And I know, like, not to be too strict with it, I keep forgetting what I'm looking at and why I keep opening to these pages. So anyway, yeah, I'm trying not to stick too heavily to it, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'll be like, okay, this structure looks really good for this route, and then I'm like, all right, well, maybe this rule can be coined. And then I'll do 2 more routes and they look terrible or they sound terrible with it. And I'm like, well, this is the tri-continental route for this particular idea. And now what do I do? And it sounds so horrible to my ears. But then I don't want to be too strict there either, because one thing I don't want to do is just have all my languages sound the same either. And my concept for my Dwero-ish, I think, would make it stand out. But then I'm like, in practice, I'm just like, there's so many things that I feel like I really made difficult for myself by not doing some of this. I really tried my best to stick to a lot of my the rules that I had already created, but I have a certain sound I'm looking for with it, and it's not coming through. But which is hard because then there's other words and names that I have absolutely coined, Some I had to do some adjusting to over time because there were some names that I just wasn't going to give them up. So they stuck and they wound up in my Semitic languages. But you know what? I just had to change a couple of things in their structure and it worked out perfectly. Problem is, like, this Duero language is just like really giving me some trouble. I am using some other things, which is, a lot of sound changes depending on where certain either specific consonants or consonant types sit. I know that becomes pretty common among certain languages, and there's no reason I can't use it to get the sounds I want. I don't know. It's weird, right? Because I'm feeling like if I'm making a Semitic language and I'm using Semitic, at least some Semitic roots that, and I'm using some of my own that I created too, because again, there were some I created. I just don't know why it's not sounding right to me, It should. I mean, I'm not as familiar with the sound of Hebrew, but I would say I'm at least casually familiar with the sound of Arabic, right? And I just feel like, oh well, this does not have that same kind of cadence and flow like that does, and I don't know. I'm extremely frustrated with it, Jim, and this is one of those points at which I usually want to give up and not touch it again for months or a year, but I just can't afford to do that anymore, so I have to keep working at it. Because I want to be talking about this another year from now about how, I haven't quite finished up enough of the languages. I mean, I want to continue to work on them. I'm not looking to finish everything. But if I can get the protos worked out, well, I have basically gotten the protos at least started with the 207 Swadesh list, and then I saw you put a comment there. So like they're pretty much done in the sense that like I researched as much as I could, keeping the stable roots. I had to go to Akkadian and West Semitic to get some of the other words, although Akkadian poses some problems, doesn't it? Because it got influenced by Sumerian, which is an isolate, but now that's getting really technical. Anyway, I'll make do. I don't know, stuff that I already have, stuff that I want to do. Some of the stuff started coming out really good. Like I started thinking, oh, well, this concept would come from this or whatever. And, then you start coining new words that just don't exist in the actual languages. But, which is the fun part, right? That's the part I really want to get to. But then it's all these rules that start messing with me because I seem to do better when I have a little bit of freedom and start making up some gibberish. But then when I bring that gibberish back into, it's like when I created the name for Chadiana. I was only lightly looking at, like, I think at the time because I was more serious about making her people like more of the Dravidians before I tied like a more Sanskrit thread into it too. So, but like when I made up that name, I just kind of vaguely knew some stuff. And, even there, I threw in an extra vowel just to give the name some better flow, but I feel like a lot of times names don't throw in extra vowels except over like an extremely long period of time. You know, and that's how you get variations of names that some people don't even realize are connected, is because, it's weird, right? Because in English, we start dealing with so many spelling changes, but generally, yeah, it would be like sound changes over time. Anyway, let me look at these comments. I'm sorry. I had the same problem with it, Lonnie, in the beginning. I made the word sound the way I wanted, even if it broke the rules. Relax into, and it will come. Some of the Semitic languages are quite divergent, like Amharic. I don't know ever how to pronounce that one. I know there's Aramaic, and then I've seen this one, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Amharic, and Maltese. Yeah, I know that there's a wide range, right? And that's what I'm saying. I want to create something very, like I said, has an oddly Old Norse sound to it, while at the same time being a Semitic language. But I'm noticing also, as much as it, believe it or not, does work with some instances, there's other instances where I'm like, this is just hot garbage. It's not working for me. Because I'm trying to create a certain sense of familiarity and reality to it too, where it just doesn't, and no offense to people that do this, don't get me wrong, but I don't want it to sound so much like a fantasy language that, it just, all the sounds are so predictably fantasy, but I want it to be pronounceable. It's like the Bantu-inspired language I created. I mean, the name of the language is Jumbaya Utu, and I had mentioned that to Mark Rosenfelder, and, he suggested how to shorten it, but he also said, I don't know why you're stressing about, I'm paraphrasing it. But he said, I don't know why you're stressing about a 4-syllable word, but I feel like that's all I ever create. I always create these like really long words, which is great if your language is agglutinative. I always mess up the pronunciation of that too. But putting together. Those work really well with very long words. But then there's other languages that prefer shorter, and I don't want all my languages to have really extra to ease the flow of pronunciation. Yeah, I get that. When I was looking at some things with sound changes, I did mention that sound changes are something that I didn't give a lot of time to in the beginning, because I remember I was just looking at lentition is like one of the ones that's very easy for me to understand, but then some of them would just give me a headache. And I remember when I would look up Welsh, because that, not to be too cliche about that too, but my Elvish was going to have some Welsh and Celtic inspirations. When I was looking at certain things with Welsh, oh my God, I felt like way overwhelmed by that. But yeah, I'm trying to, I'm at a point now where it's like, okay, I'll base this off of be a general Semitic language, but if the cases in Akkadian sound better, or the Hebrew way of naming conventions sounds better, then I'll just do something like that. It'll still be composite. I just want it to work from a proto base, but yeah, I'm trying. Look at it this way, Jim. It's bigger than it's ever been. It's more progress than I've ever made, because not only am I not giving up or just giving way to like reckless abandon on my language as I am sticking with it, because this has been, I think I'm into my second month of barely writing and mostly working on the languages right now. So, but again, I just have to. Oh, lady, Sorella, do you think I could get some flow going with my my spot here, my little drawing, please? Thank you, lady. Thank you, lady. Okay, let's try this again. Well, Chadiana is a good example of like a name that I coined outside of the rules exactly, right? But then what happened was I was originally going to go with the meaning of scarred daughter, with Yana being daughter and Chadi being scarred. But then I forget. I was doing some research on a name that I really like and I'm using in a different part of the world in a different time period, the name Janus. And somehow, when I looked at that name, I found the etymological connection to Yana, or Yan, which is this Sanskrit word for, oh, I forgot. It's like spiritual path or whatever, but apparently Janus and Sanskrit Yan have a connection, So I was like, oh, well, and it had something to do with like wandering and path and stuff like that. So then I said, well, what if I make it Chadiana is scarred wanderer instead of scarred daughter, because I think making Yana daughter would just be too far out of the realm of any sort of familiarity whatsoever. So I changed it to scarred wanderer traveler. But then there's another weird thing. She's Chadiana, right? And I was going to have scarred with regard to like specifically of fire, like fire scarred. So Chadi or Chad would be scarred, but then it's like, well, what are the rules that's an adjective versus a noun? But anyway, taking that for granted, right? But then I came up with the name of her homeland, right? Her home city, which is going to be I think I might put an H in front of that. I'm not sure why. But this would be the name of her actual like homeland in the north, where her father's from, which is Jaloristad, which would be something like which would refer to like a desert land area. It would be, I guess it's situated in present day, what would be like Pakistan or Rajasthan or whatever, like in that upper area of South Asia. But Unstad was just a bastardization of Stan, with a little bit of my own spin on it. I kind of like how it sounds. It still sounds South Asian without being directly that. But Jalor, I wanted to connect to Chadi, but that's like a D and L. I don't know I don't know. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like that too. I really like that name. So Stad will probably come up more as an ending in some of the the other stuff. I mean, the full land, right? The full land is what? Vandia? right? Okay. That's like the name for like the fictional Indian land. And that comes from Vana and Adia, right? But I didn't want it to be Vanadia, right? So Vandia, it kind of got like coming together. But so Adia is like is for heart, and Vana is for worlds, right? So it's like the world heart. But then that I had a word in Elvish, an old coined word, which I still like, which is honor, which kind of I make these loose connections in my head, right? So you have Vanadia from Vana Adia, right? And then that comes from like Elvish Anor, heart, becomes Adia, which I still feel like, how the hell does that happen? One language removed, right? But then this is where it gets really complicated because, and now I'm probably going to have this wrong in my head. I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of the languages of the humans are SOV. And they're VSO for a lot of the giants too are SOV. But that means you have like an adjective noun set. Well, see, I had an old word, an old name that I still like, which is Uthalanor, right? Which was for a villain. Uthalanor, which was supposed to be Blackheart. But technically now, because of the way that I have the structure of Elvish, it should be Anaruthal, but I kind of like Uthalanor better. So it's like, well, now my rules are like all messed up. And these are just words that I coined on my own. This isn't even getting into incorporating some of the other stuff, right? That's like actual real world. But yeah, you can kind of see how the stress starts coming in with this stuff because I'm just like, oh, well, that contradicts a rule. Or I coined Adia from Honor, and I don't even know how that rule works because I just pulled it out of my butt, like. And then I'll go back and I'll start looking at things and just saying, like, does this even linguistically make sense? And yet I can look at the way people do conlangs, or I can look at even real world languages and how words morph and, position of consonants change or get dropped or, new sounds added or what. And it all makes sense to me. Yeah, that's true. They do have words whose etymology is unknown. And I wanted Elvish to have a little bit of a free, even though it is it's an Indo-European language, right? That's the one that was going to be Indo-European, which makes sense to me too, because yeah, it's cliche, but if they were the firstborn, they would probably have the most robust lexicon, right? So it works out okay. Because yeah, it's unfortunate, I feel like, but that's the most dense lexicon you can find on the internet is Proto-Indo-European out of any of the like ancient languages. Everything else like pales in comparison. Or they have a lot of words that are just not on the Swadesh list and aren't always useful to me. Like, I really don't know why I would ever use the Dravidian, Proto-Dravidian word for like a betel nut. I don't know that that's ever going to come up in a story. I can't say for sure, but I'm just like, that exists. I don't know if I'll use it. Yeah, I get that. A free word order is okay, but within limitations. I just, I don't want to overdo it. And then it's like, well, taking too many liberties there, JM. No language has that free of a word order. Anyway, yeah. Well, I'm glad you can see a little bit of what I'm working with. So Uthalanor is an old name. That one comes from like the original attempts at names. I had other ones like let's see. Some of them that I am keeping. Is it going to type or not? I'm just feeding all of this into the and so these were a lot of like the older Elvish words because I worked heavily on Elvish back then, of course, because Tolkien. Oh wait, there were other ones. Those are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. Names for various elves, and then Tiraelarch is a city. But to me those have a very fantasy look to them. And I don't, and some of the whatchamacallit, the spellings of those will probably change because I've just changed the way in which certain sounds are transliterated, so they could change. Actually, they may not. Well, Elvish, I want to have more Y's in it, so it's possible that some of that will, just to give it that, kind of Welsh flair. But anyway. But yeah, I go back and forth because here's the other thing. I don't want to create faux pas in the sense that, like, if a native speaker of a language from a real world family were to look at some of my choices and be like, this either sounds terrible or unpronounceable or like borderline offensive because maybe I accidentally coin a word that I didn't even realize was like potentially bad or a slur or something, like I don't want to do that on accident. So that's a concern. And I don't want to create stuff where it's just like, oh my God, like this is just like a really awful version of what we speak. Or I just wind up like coining words that actually exist, even though I'm using stuff as I don't know. This is how I get too heady about it. You can you can watch a little bit of this happening, right? Just because I'm like putting things out there on the screen right now to you, Jim. So you're seeing it. Like there's been work. There's been some work, and then there's some names that they've been around too long. So I want to keep them, but I get held up in naming other things or rendering even a couple of sentences and things because then I don't want to like finish a lot of the grammar rules. Here's another one that I did a while ago, right? I had a name called it was a city. It was was a city called Kalima Nasir, right? And then I said, oh my God, but this works really well in my Semitic language. And it was kind of like a Middle Eastern type city. And I already had the coined word odd for of, even though I feel like that's so not Arabic. So what I changed it to, I think actually Nasir originally had two S's in it, but I changed it to, and I'm going to put it up there, Palace. Kalima Nasir was known as the Palace of Treasure, and so I recoined it into the words. This is like so much for live drawing. This is becoming like JM talks about as conlangs. I changed the word. I updated it, right, or the name from Kalima Nasir to Kalim at Nasir, which is still the same thing. Palace of Treasures, Nasir being treasures, you know. And this is like a long yeah, well, I'm sometimes I'm rehashing the same. Well, I've told you about this. There's a lot of stuff that's been there, right? All those names. Right, let's go back to this, right? Uthalanor, right? These names, Quemlir, Eridala, Astathiel, Astania, Heclean, and Tirilarch, those were all old names. Kalima Nasir was an old name that got updated a while ago still to Kalim ad Nasir. And then, there was another one, right? Kalima Nasir is the Palace of Treasures. And that existed in, I forget it now. Ra Abakar, right. Ra. So this was originally how the great city of trade, right? Ra Abakar. That's how it was originally rendered way back when I wrote about it actually in the novel that I wrote in college. So I changed it to Ra Abakar, just dropping one vowel, right? I mean, one consonant. So it would be the tri-consonantal root. But because Ra has been there as great, and that was just a little borrowing from the sun god Ra, right? I made that great like way, way, way back when. That Ra as great has stuck around since that had to be 2004 I coined that word. So that's like a 20-year-old word in the history of my conlines. And it's bounced around for what the source of that word was. But what's interesting is I know that it at least goes back to my empire of a mooncom, which is that got mentioned in the first Chadiana story way back in 2000, in the second Chadiana story way back in 2012. And I've always had the idea for an Egyptian-like area and a Middle Eastern area. They've always been there, but on the fringes. And then, Chadiana gave me a chance to explore it. But Amuncom has been there, and they had a city called Kalek Fum. It was originally Kalek Fum Ra, right? But then I realized, but that root, Kalek, right? I said, but it really is close to the KLM of, because that one is like city of the great river, city of the great water, right? Famra being the great river, I guess close to the Nile. and I forget where I got FOM from. I think it was from a Final Fantasy game. It was a bastardization of a word. But I thought that collect kind of sounded very close to Kalim, which was the already coined word in the more Arabic language for city. So KLK became KLM, and then it just changed to, Kalam from Ra. And then I decided that to give it a little bit of different flavor, right? Kalima Nasir, and this is still going back a while ago, I decided that to give the more Arabic-like language a little bit of a different flavor, I would render its K sounds with Qs, kind of taking inspiration from one of the alternate spellings of the Quran. So that became, for some reason it's not updating on my laptop, so I'll put it here. Then Kalima Nasir with the K became Kalima Nasir with the Q. I know this is all so fascinating, right? But I feel like I get those little bits in, and then I might take all these rules that I've already established with this Arabic stuff, take a root like even the KTB root, right? It's like, Suntur ta Azdala. I like that. Yeah. It's not, I like how yours sounds. I just feel like everything I make sounds like silly, pedantic gibberish. But unsurprisingly, I'm extremely critical of my conlanging, probably the same way I am with my art. It's hard doing it on my own. I got very frustrated with it today, and I started losing my sanity over it. I appreciate getting to share this with you on a live stream, Jim. Nobody else is here. They don't, which is good because they probably would just be like, what the hell? This is what I'm waiting for Chadiana issues for, is because this guy's just making up. But I need to do it. I want to fill in my maps. So how do I put it? I stopped coining names because I knew that I had to start making rules before I got myself into trouble. But I keep getting frustrated with this part of the process, this growth part of the process, or sometimes with some of the things that actually come out that I don't know. And that's the other thing, too. I want things to sound familiar, but not too familiar. It's like even when I created Priyanki's name, right? What was I forget what the name of... It's for Priyanki, which becomes Priyanki, right? Which is Chadiana's sometimes sidekick. Anki is from... I just decided to go with that as the word for eyes, or eye, which is from Ankh, If my naming is any indication, your languages do have a unique flavor. Well, I'm trying. But sometimes I feel like they don't. Sometimes I feel like they just sound so crazy. And the thing is, it has a cadence and melody to it for me too. But it's this one got me into trouble, right? The assassin group that Chadiana is a part of, and I just like just like the name too much to get rid of it. But it just makes, I don't even know all the ins and outs of it. And some of the things had changed, right? The telefatir, which took me a while to figure out how the pronunciation of that should be. I liked the way it was. But it comes from an older word, either pata or plata for like darkness or the void or whatever. But like, I don't know, the tull part like really causes some trouble because I wanted something that sounded Arabic, and there's a lot of those I'll start. So I put the T in there to kind of give it a little something unique. And I was just like, well, now what does the tull mean? What does the tull mean before the actual like ifatir, I don't know. And then, of course, I have this name too, which has shown up a lot. Actually, two names which showed up a lot. Raman Abzalir, who's the leader of that group, right? And then you also has shown up in the world, Shalarad, right? But now here's the problem with a Shalarad. This one gets me into trouble too. Stupid me not knowing enough about Arabic when I coined that name. I love that name. I'm not getting rid of it. But I liked the name Scheherazade, right? Okay. But that's a female name. That's a woman's name. And instead of the T, it uses a D at the end. I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, okay, whatever. But then I forget. I was talking to some native speaker about a name of his in Arabic, and I was using the wrong name, and he said, no, if it's a D at the end, it's feminine. And I was like, oh no. And then it dawned on me, that maybe my inspiration for the name for a male character being, well, it was kind of like a mix between Ishtar and Scheherazade. Both females, though, and that's a male character. So I'm like, well, doesn't that screw up my plan then? And I'm still using final T as like a feminine indicator, but then it's like, well, do all my feminine names have to end with T? And is D too close in the sound that there's not enough differentiation that it would still read as a female name? Like, all these rules start going through my head, and this is where I get locked up. You can see it in real time, though. Ralanad Salir is Lord of Illusion. Ishalarad, I don't want to say what it stands for, but it has to do with secrecy and incognito and stuff like that. But I didn't even create the rule in which that word is created. For it to be a triconsonantal root, that means the shalar has to be the root and the odd is like an ending, which is fine. But then it's like, oh, what are the rules there? I have to do sometimes this like reverse engineering, which gets to be one of those things that locks me up and stresses me out. Anyway, there's 3 people watching, and they're like, what the F is he talking about? Could he just draw? Well, you're one of the 3, though, so I'm not too worried about that with you, Jim. But it is kind of like if any of this starts making sense to you, or it's dawning on you, oh my God, JM really is a psycho. Like, I can totally understand why he's having trouble with his languages, because he's just telefatir is, oh really? Not all Semitics do gender the same way. If your language is independent, do worry about what. Yeah, I understand that. Again, it's supposed to be familiar but not exact, I would love to have some names that show up even that are just like Priyanki. There's Priya in there, right? So I like having those little bits of things that are like, oh yeah, that's familiar, but it's really not. Yeah, if your language is independent, yeah, I know you meant don't. Tuliftir is Maltese for of praise. Well, that's interesting. I was thinking about making the tull part of it because I already have the odd as, ad as of. So I was thinking about the tull being like from or of in like a certain sense where it's like specifically like created from and almost as like the essence of it, because I do like these abstract I do like the idea of abstract concepts, or what would be abstract to an English speaker, so they don't have a direct translation. But then the hardest thing about those is like, how do I communicate those to a reader if they were going to read like a lexicon, because eventually I would like to produce those separate from the books, right? If I had a dictionary there, it's like, well, now how do I communicate this concept, which is foreign to, an English speaker, so that they really understand the meaning of this particular term. No, you're right. I appreciate the advice of not worrying about what a native speaker would think of it, because there is a little bit of that I have to consider, right? This is all the stuff I should have done years ago. I really should. I should have locked myself into a chair, changed myself down, and said, "This is what you're doing today, JM." Instead, I just have puzzle pieces all over the place that I now have to start connecting and create new stuff. And it's just, I know here's the one thing I do know, Jim. I know I'll get there, but the only way I'm going to get there is to stop when the frustration settles in, to stop saying, that's it, I give up, I can't take any more. I'll just go with what I got for now, and I'll worry about it later. Because then when later comes, I'm like, oh, damn, like I never figured the way this works or the way that works. And now I just coined a whole other subset of like rules that don't even make sense with the rest of them. And, this is what the overthinking does to me with these things, And now you're getting the fault. If I'm giving you a headache, please let me know. Because believe me, that's how I stopped working on them right after college. I had a pretty decent, I wouldn't say it was it 100 words? I wasn't using a Swadesh list because I didn't even know about it at the time. But coming out of college, I must have had about 20 words in what would have been like the Middle Eastern language. I had about 10 words each in the language of the giants and the dwarves. And then I might have had like somewhere between 50 and 100 of the Elvish worked out. Again, not Swadesh. Some of the words probably exist on the Swadesh list. But then it was just haphazard after that, even with Chadiana. Even when I started thinking about the language of the more, what is that? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. The more like Egyptian type, it can happen with my artwork. I just, But all that stuff that I just told you about with like Kalima Nasir and, you know, how Elvish Anor becomes Varasi, Adia, like that's all the stuff I love, right? I forgot that I do have 2 other language names worked out. There's right, for the more African Bantu language, right? There's Jumbayawutu, right? And then there's also for the there's also Tommy Sakal, which is the rain song, right? And then there's also the more recently coined Varasi, right? Right. So you have like these 3. Jumbayutu is more Bantu. Tommy Sakal is the Dravidian one that's been around for a while. And then Varasi is the more Sanskrit Hindi one. And Jumbayutu had quite a few words coined in it. So did Tommy Sakal, because Chadiana's original place of birth was Garatampal, which still will exist, but that's the land of sun and rain. So Pal being land, Tom and Tommy being rain, Gora being earth or land. Sun, Gora, right? Yeah, there are a lot of names that are coined. Like, that's the thing, is that's where, like, there's a lot happening. But then it's, like, so threadbare, if that makes any sense. Like, when you really start digging into the weeds of it all, like, there's not much there to really look at. I wonder who is watching. Everyone's on YouTube. There's 3 people on YouTube, and you're the only one talking, Jim. That's okay. Everyone else is just probably looking at this and being like, he's lost his mind. He's absolutely lost his mind. Somebody call the people in the somebody call the white van, get him a jacket. We need to take him away. But if it makes any sense, and if this is any indication, when I do start talking about it, hopefully you understand the passion in my voice for it. Like, I really do like this stuff. I just get a lot of, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome. And then I also get very heady about it. Well, you can see that. But there's a lot of this that I like. There's a lot of that. Some of the stuff I've described, I want it to keep happening with the languages, where they just keep influencing each other, and just like it's this endless cycle of borrowed words and, you know, new coined terms. And, you know, I want to have a whole, I think most of your watchers understand intricacies. I hope so. It's just, I feel bad that so much of Chadiana has been held up just because I'm like, I don't want to keep coming up with names unless I have rules for how those names come together. And then every time I start coming up with rules, I get too frustrated to finish it. And that's really been why some of it gets held up. But I really want to highlight some of these things. Part of the reason that issue 3 has been held up, after I got past like feeling self-conscious about the artwork, is because I have a couple of lines that are being spoken by a native speaker of the lands of Amuncom, which is the Egyptian area. And that's why I'm so concentrated on the Semitic languages right now. And then he breaks that language to go into what's rendered as English, but, you know, Chadiana is bilingual in that she can, well, actually she would be trilingual because she could speak Tommy Sakal, Varasi, and also Alu Alar, which is the more Arabic language. I might change that name, though, even though I like the sound of it. It's just the concept behind its initial creation change. So Alu Alar being, what was that? I think Voice of the Gods or something like that. It just doesn't work as well anymore. I was on the sidelines because a Rockstar Whatnot auction dude was selling great sci-fi books. You're hilarious, Rob. Thank you, though, for showing up. Technically, this would have been a Whatnot week, but since I didn't go live last week because of my dad's birthday, I just decided to make this a live stream. I'll probably do Whatnot in 2 weeks. Yeah, Jim, I said it at the beginning, but what I'm probably going to do is alternate weeks. I think first, third, and if there's ever a fifth week, a fifth Tuesday in a month, first, third, and fifth Tuesdays will be live streams, and second and fourth will be my Whatnot show, which is also a live show, but it's on the Whatnot app. I've been having some luck, not always great luck, but some luck with selling things on it. And, although I want to get my YouTube watch hours, so maybe I could monetize here too. I'm doing well with selling some things over there. But of course, you're always free to contact me if you're interested in something. You don't have to go grab the Whatnot app. And it does remind me at some point in the future, what I am going to do is create a whole bunch of those mini canvases, and I'm going to do a whole Whatnot show with them. But, I know you were very happy with yours, Jim, so I might give you a little heads up with pictures before they go live on the Whatnot. Just to thank you for all the help. I haven't been able to make it to those. I would have been great to be at the Conlang group meetings the past couple of weeks, but I've had a convention every week. So let's see if this is good. Yeah, I know. I love that heart too. I kind of want to do another one, but different, maybe with a chain or something. This camera was getting all slow, so I had it off for a bit. But now you can see me again in Cirilla. But yeah, well, I appreciate all the live feedback, Jim, because man, well, now you can see a little bit of the inner workings and how I wound up with so many languages too, because I kind of wanted to have a little bit of this flavor, and I wanted a little bit of this culture represented or that one, and it just started snowballing, And then, like I said, some things changed. Originally, before I had a full understanding of things, the language of the giants was based off of Finnish, and the language of the dwarves was based off of Old Norse. But then when I moved the dwarves into Semitic, that kind of changed. They were originally both connected. They were both in the same language family, but then that completely got scrapped later on during COVID when I really worked out a better structure for the linguistic history. So Dwaroish was the one that suffered the most because it didn't even really get to keep too many of its coined terms, but it was also the least represented in any of the works. So it sort of worked out. But I still wanted to keep some of that Old Norse flavor, which is why I still kept it as I wanted to have some of the sound of that, even though it's a Semitic language. But again, the way I have it is the Dueros come from a land that would be roughly in the vicinity of where present-day Australia and New Zealand is. And they traveled by sea and landed in basically what would be the now Middle East, and then continued to migrate out of that area. You know, the giants would have come from the upper northeast, elves from the upper northwest, humans from basically the area of present-day Africa. So it's almost like an X in the way they moved up. But then there's another part of it. There's not a lot of surviving giantish because they were subjugated and killed off over time, and they had the most, they assimilated the most, and there was a lot of, I guess the best term is, they do a lot of, what is that called? When you take things from another culture, they do a lot of, it was used as a negative term, and I guess still is to a certain extent, but in the Giants' case, it's not. They, oh, why can't I think of that word? When you're outside of a culture and use some of its specific cultural things, you are, I can't, appropriation. Thank you so much. Yeah, the giants tend to appropriate other things, so their culture kind of dies off because of them, their own numbers dying, but then also a lot of what they take on from other cultures. Of course, humans are the most widespread. The elves probably spread out the least, going mostly to the Far East and just to what would be South Asia, but they don't really travel further than that. The Dueros do a lot of traveling, but less so south and Far East and more middle and north. So yeah, I even have a map that shows all of the basically the travel patterns of a lot of the races or species, and how like that would bring certain languages into interact with each other. So yeah, it's like, this is like the nerdiest thing I do, I swear, but I like it, you know. I'm better at this part of it. I'm better at like talking about all this history stuff and like how it worked, like the real like conceptual part of it. But then when it comes down to the nitty gritty, that's when I get locked up. This is the easy part, talking about migration and where this language started and how this language began because of its interaction with these people, and yeah, some of it borrows heavily or is inspired by it's loosely broad strokes of some of the world's actual history, but still, like it gives me a framework. And I don't know, I like how I've connected some of what's real world to some of what makes sense within the fantasy world. And it's just interesting to me. It's interesting to kind of do that quasi history thing. Yeah, this was the most educational live stream on some of my world building. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It becomes overbearing sometimes, but I think it's only because I really overthink it to like the nth degree. I keep getting into this mindset where I don't want to make mistakes or write myself into holes that I can't get out of later. You know, I would like there to be some sound structure to it, you know. And what's amazing is grammar is what I was best at when I was learning Italian. And yet I just can't seem to get past grammar rules at like a basic level for me to just be like, okay, that's what it is. We're moving on from this. Just my head starts spinning. But I'll give you a couple minutes to add something else if you wish to, Jim. Otherwise, you can email me all your thoughts and concerns about my mental health when it comes to my con lines. That's a joke, though. Otherwise, yeah, it's about 10:30, so I'll probably end it. I was only going to start doing like an hour, 9 to 10, but you know, sometimes I wind up talking about con lines for an hour, and that lengthens it. Yeah, I can always change it or incorporate it. Yes, that's 100% true. And technically, I should be able to do that with the languages because there are always irregulars, right? And there's always contradictions. So I think where I'm struggling with it the most is I don't know how that shows in a Semitic language. Although I'm fascinated to death with Semitic languages because I love the idea of those triconsonantal roots and moving them around and inserting your vowel sounds in between or before and after. And like, that's all fascinating to me. I even want to work in a structure where backwards and forwards, the roots create different words. So KLM might be the word for city. MLK, which is actually a root for king, I might keep that, right? But like that, like I want to use that where like, you know, you have roots working back and forth to create words of even that. So yeah, even though I have all that, I don't know how irregulars work in Semitic languages. I don't know how a contradiction can be a contradiction in them. Amharic, it's spoken in Ethiopia and has African influences. Sure. I certainly will. Maybe it's time to look at it. Like I said, I'm not really too familiar. The language comes up a lot in my research, but I've never looked into it. But it works because I forget who it was, but somebody told me to look up Coptic if I was having, or Coptic if I was having trouble with ancient Egyptian. So for this, right? Harik. You know what it is? I see it and I'm like, well, that's not Aramaic. So, and I just pass it by. I might throw some Niger. It is Semitic. Well, that's good to know. Maybe it'll help. I'll be able to look at it from. And what was the other one you mentioned? Was it Maltese? Maybe I'll look those up tomorrow. Just try to get some other inspiration. You know, much appreciated. Well, anyway, now that everyone's had a primer on 6 different con lines I'm working on, I'm going to get going for tonight. I'll be back with a live stream next week, and then I guess the week after will be a whatnot show. I'm still figuring that out. I think that's how I'm going to do it, though. But anyway, yeah, not much got done here, but we got to learn a lot about the languages in JM's worlds. Maltese Semitic, heavily influenced by Italian. Actually, that might be really good for me, though, because having learned Italian, maybe it'll be a good jumping point for some of the things that I'm still confused about. because I can kind of see the Italian influences and see how it works out. I don't know. But yeah. Good night, Rob. Good night, Jim. Good night to the faceless person that was watching before. I'll be back next week. Fan Expo Boston this weekend. Another 3-day show, which I'm really looking forward to, but I gotta admit I'm kind of tired already. And thanks so much for all the feedback, Jim, and the recommendations. I'll look at this stuff tomorrow, and I'll report back. You'll hear how it goes. All right, everyone. And maybe, one of these days I'll have a new Chadiana issue coming out because I won't have any more of this stuff going on. But anyway, thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you, next week. And music going again so we can end this ceremony. I should probably raise that like I'm doing right now on finishing the talking. And then, put up the banner at the end. All right. Good night, everyone.